Ever since I saw that unsent Instagram draft on River's phone, I changed completely. When he worked night shifts, I stopped waiting up. When his clothes carried unfamiliar perfume, I stopped asking questions. When he explained that running into his first love was just a coincidence, I said flatly, I believe you. In the car accident, he instinctively shielded Clara in the passenger seat. I was in the back, my face covered in blood from the impact. At the gallery, he threw himself toward Clara without a second thought. I stood there, cut by shattered glass, no one caring. At the fire scene, he rushed in recklessly to save her. I stood outside and took off the engagement ring he'd just placed on my finger. I left a breakup note on the coffee table, flew to Africa, and disappeared into the crowd. 3 months later, he tracked me down to the savannah like a madman, his eyes red. Winona, you're the one I actually love. I looked at him and smiled. River, I don't care anymore. Winona's POV. Ever since I saw that unsent Instagram draft on River's phone, I became a completely different person. When he worked night shifts until dawn, there was no longer a light waiting for him at home. When he spent over 10 hours straight in the operating room, I stopped texting to ask if he was tired. When his shirts occasionally carried traces of unfamiliar perfume, I stopped asking about it. Even when acute gastroenteritis struck me in the middle of the night, and I dragged myself to the ER alone, when the nurse quietly asked, "No family member with you?" I simply said, "I don't have any family." The nurse looked down at her computer, then glanced at me again. "You're the director's girlfriend, right? I saw you at the hospital gala last time. The director is working the night shift tonight, just upstairs. Should I call him?" River was the youngest director this hospital had ever had. I hadn't expected to be recognized. No need. I closed my eyes. Don't disturb him at work. The nurse seemed like she wanted to say something but ultimately just arranged for me to stay in the observation room. Half an hour later, the observation room door swung open. River walked in wearing his crisp white coat, his palm habitually pressing against my forehead, his brow furrowing slightly. "Why didn't you just call me when you got sick?" His palm was warm, with that familiar touch. In the past, even with just a mild headache, that warmth would have been enough to help me sleep peacefully. I turned my head away, avoiding his touch. "It's just acute gastroenteritis. Some 4 fluids and I'll be fine. It's not a big deal." River's hand froze in midair. He wanted to say something, but conversation from the hallway interrupted him, growing closer. "The director really cares about that Miss Clara in the VIP room. It's just an appendectomy, but he personally performed the surgery, and he visits her every single day after, staying for ages." I heard that Miss Clara is the director's professor's daughter, and they used to date? No wonder the director treats her so specially. It's already 11 at night, and didn't the director just go up to see her again? The voices faded with the footsteps, leaving an awkward silence. River's expression changed. "Don't pay attention to that gossip," he said almost reflexively. "Clara is my professor's daughter. Before he died, he asked me to look after her. She has no family in this city. As her doctor, it's my responsibility to take extra care of her." I acknowledged with a sound and said nothing more. This response somehow irritated River. "You don't believe me?" "I believe you." I turned to look at him. "You've always been a responsible doctor. It's right to take care of your patients." River froze, suddenly at a loss for words. In the past, he always found my insecurity annoying and would explain impatiently, "Clara and I are ancient history. Now I only see her as my professor's daughter. Can you stop being so sensitive?" Now I'd finally become what he wanted, not sensitive, not questioning, not angry. His frown deepened. He was about to speak when a soft thud came from outside the door. Clara stood in the doorway, leaning on an 4-pole, her face pale as paper, the hem of her hospital gown stained with red from blood backing up into the 4-line. "River." She bit her lip, her voice weak. "I heard from the nurse that Miss Winona was hospitalized too. Why are you out of bed?" River rushed over to support her, his tone both reproachful and concerned. "Didn't I tell you that you must stay in bed and rest?" Clara leaned weakly against him. "I was worried about Miss Winona. I wanted to come see her." River sighed helplessly, scooped Clara up in his arms, and said to me over his shoulder, "I'll take her back to her room first. I'll be right back to stay with you." His silhouette carrying Clara disappeared into the white light at the end of the hallway. I stared at the needle in the back of my hand, remembering River's unsent Instagram post. The caption read, "Being by your side feels like going back to the past." In that moment, I woke up as if from a dream. I finally understood. Deep in River's heart, he had never truly let go of Clara. I suppressed the sharp pain in my chest, picked up my phone, and opened the unread email. I replied, "I have carefully read the email and am willing to accept this 3-year photography expedition to Africa." Winona's POV. By the time the 4 finished, the sky was already showing its first light. River never returned. I called the nurse myself, had the needle removed, declined the suggestion to stay for observation, and walked alone through the empty hallways. The smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils, and I suddenly remembered many years ago, also at a hospital, also on a cold morning like this. Back then, I was accompanying my mother for chemotherapy. After my mother fell asleep, I crouched in the stairwell, completely breaking down, not daring to make a sound, burying my face in my knees, my shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, a pair of clean, slender fingers handed me a pack of tissues. I looked up and saw River in his white coat. His features were refined and handsome, his expression gentle as he comforted me. "Don't cry. Your mother will get better." The first time I met him, I remembered that voice and those beautiful eyes. Later, when my mother passed away, I found a note under her pillow while sorting through her belongings. It had a phone number written on it, with a small line of text beside it. "If you need help, you can call this number. River." I never called that number, but I carefully kept the note in the pocket of my wallet. The second time I met him was at a gathering a friend organized. River sat in the darkest corner of the booth, his white shirt unbuttoned at the top 2 buttons, gold-rimmed glasses resting on the table. He drank alone, the surrounding commotion seemingly unrelated to him. My friend pushed me over. "That's Dr. River. Like you, he's single. You two should have a good chat." As I approached, River looked up. The moment our eyes met, his gaze clearly wavered. "Have we met before?" he asked. I took out that yellowed note from my wallet. River stared at it for a long time, so long I thought he'd forgotten that first meeting before I heard him say, "So it was you. You actually kept this note?" "Yes." I replied softly. "Thank you for that." That night he drove me home. In the car he suddenly spoke. "Winona, want to be with me?" My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would leap out of my chest. But I held back the impulse and asked him, "Why so sudden?" "I just think you're a really good person." He paused. "And you like me, don't you?" I did have different feelings for him, because of that first meeting. The note he left me had been a sliver of warm light in my darkest, saddest moments. Only later did I learn that the reason he was drinking alone that night was because he'd just broken up not long before. Clara had been the one to end it. Simply because Clara was going abroad to further her studies and felt long distance was too difficult. She broke up with him directly. Clara left decisively, completely uncaring about River's humble attempts to salvage the relationship. I wasn't unaware that when he started a new relationship at that time, it wasn't because he liked me that much, but because he wanted someone to help him move on from his dead-end romance with Clara. But even so, I still agreed to be with him. I always believed sincerity could be met with sincerity. As long as I was good enough to him, loved him enough, eventually he would completely let go of Clara, with only me in his heart and eyes. In reality, during the 4 years we'd been together, River was a competent boyfriend. He remembered all my food aversions, remembered my monthly cycle, remembered my birthday and all our anniversaries. His gifts and restaurant reservations were always thoughtfully arranged. My friends always envied me, saying thoughtful men like River were nearly impossible to find even with a lantern to light the way. I also thought I'd truly entered his heart. But a month ago, Clara suddenly returned to the country. A phone call came through, her voice tearful, saying her father was critically ill and she was alone at the hospital. After that, everything changed. Not only did he come home later and later after work, but his clothes always carried traces of unfamiliar perfume. Even in the middle of the night, when Clara dreamed of her deceased father and became sad, he'd grab a jacket and rush out. Because of Clara, we started arguing frequently. I felt like a paranoid, resentful woman. While despising myself, I couldn't help asking him again and again with red eyes, "After all these years, have you still not forgotten her?" He grew increasingly impatient, blaming me for being sensitive and suspicious, saying he only took care of Clara to fulfill his professor's dying wish. For a time, I thought maybe I really was being too sensitive and suspicious, until I accidentally saw that unsent draft post on his phone. At that moment, my world completely shattered. My heart felt like it was being cut with knives, unbearably painful. Yet instead of fighting or making a scene, I completely gave up hope. Winona's POV. When I got home, it was already full daylight. The house was quiet, just as it had been when I left for the ER. Suddenly my phone rang. "Is this Miss Winona?" A capable female voice came through. "Regarding the 3-year ecological photography expedition to Africa, we need final confirmation. Have you really thought this through? The conditions in the African wilderness are extremely harsh, and you'll need to be away from family and friends for an extended period." I gripped my phone. "I've thought it through." "All right, we'll handle the visa on our end. We just need you to provide some documents. The departure date is set for the 5th of next month. Is that okay with you?" "The 5th of next month, 2 weeks from now." I responded, "No problem." After ending the call, I looked around every corner of the house. I'd decorated this home bit by bit. When I moved in 4 years ago, it was empty with only the most basic furniture. I spent so much effort choosing curtain colors, selecting sofa styles, filling the balcony with plants, hanging my photography work on the walls. I used to think this would be my forever home with River, that we'd live here together for a very long time. But now, soon I'd be leaving forever. I pulled out my suitcase and was halfway through packing when the door opened. River stood in the doorway. Seeing my open suitcase, he froze. "What are you doing?" I paused. "Nothing much. Just felt like the house had too much stuff. It's been a while since I did a clean out, so I'm throwing away things I don't use or need anymore." He was about to ask more when his phone suddenly rang. It was a special ringtone. His expression shifted slightly. He picked up his phone and walked to the balcony to answer. "Just got home. What's wrong?" I continued organizing my camera equipment, pretending not to hear. From the balcony, River's lowered voice came in fragments. "The wound hurts? Is it infected? Don't worry, I'll come check on you right away." "Okay, I know, just lie down and don't move." After the call ended, River walked back, his expression somewhat complicated. I'd already finished cleaning my last lens and was carefully placing them into specially protected cases. I looked up with a smile. "What's wrong?" "Something at the hospital." "It's Clara." River hesitated. "She said her wound suddenly hurts a lot. It might be infected. I need to go check on her." I looked at him and suddenly felt like such a failure. For years, over 1,000 days and nights of companionship and devotion couldn't earn a man's wholehearted love. I nodded. "Then go quickly. Wound infection is no small matter. You can't delay." "Winona, go on." I'd already stood up, zipping up my camera case. "Miss Clara needs you most right now. Don't keep her waiting." In the past, if I heard he was going to see Clara, I would definitely have asked with red-rimmed eyes. "You just came back from the hospital. There are other doctors. Do you really need to go?" But now, I just smiled and even reminded him not to keep Clara waiting. "I'll be back as soon as possible." River nodded. "Let's have lunch together, okay? At that new Japanese restaurant you've been wanting to try." I smiled. "Sure. But if you get held up there, it's fine. I can take care of myself." River opened his mouth to say something but ultimately said nothing, turning and leaving the bedroom. I stood there, listening to the sound of the car engine starting and gradually fading away. Then I continued packing. Winona's POV. At noon, River didn't come back. I received a text from him. "Clara's wound is indeed a bit infected and needs treatment. I might be late getting back. Eat lunch yourself, don't wait for me." I looked at that text, my finger hovering over the screen for a few seconds. Then I turned off the screen without replying. The day Clara was discharged happened to be my birthday. River had mentioned it to me a few days in advance. Clara just lost her father not long ago, and she doesn't have any relatives or friends here. I want to throw her a birthday party, to lift her spirits and improve her mood. I was organizing my equipment list for the Africa trip. Without looking up, I said, "Sure, do you need me to help arrange it?" River paused. He'd expected me to be unhappy. "You don't mind?" he asked tentatively. "Mind what?" I looked up. Throwing a party for a friend is perfectly normal. Besides, Miss Clara's had it pretty rough. Her father just died, and she had surgery and was hospitalized herself. He didn't let me help arrange the birthday party. On the day itself, everyone who attended were old classmates Clara and River had in common. As River's girlfriend, I was naturally on the invitation list too. After too much drinking, the atmosphere grew lively. "I'm just saying," a tipsy guy stood up with his glass. "Our director and Miss Clara were the best couple at medical school back in the day. I want to see them drink while gazing into each other's eyes." The private room instantly erupted with jeering. River frowned. "Stop it. Winona's here." "What about Winona?" Another girl chimed in. "Winona's super chill. Right, Winona?" Everyone looked at me. I said casually, "Go ahead and play. It's a birthday, having fun is what matters most." Amid the jeering, River and Clara picked up their glasses. The two stood very close, close enough to smell each other's breath. Clara's face was flushed, her eyes bright as she looked at River, while River's expression was complicated, his gaze involuntarily drifting toward me. I held up my phone, taking photos. After they finished drinking, the room filled with applause and whistles. River set down his glass, his first reaction to look at me. I'd already put away my phone, and was chatting with someone nearby. "Winona." River walked to my side, lowering his voice. "Just now. The photos came out really well." I turned my phone screen toward him, showing the photo I'd just taken. The image frozen on the moment River and Clara drank their crossed toast. "Look, the lighting and composition are both good. Miss Clara's white dress photographs beautifully." River was speechless. Halfway through the party, I got up to use the restroom. Coming out of the restroom, I ran into Clara in the hallway. "Miss Winona." Clara stopped me, an apologetic look on her face. "About earlier. I'm sorry. Everyone was just playing around. Please don't take it to heart." I turned to look at her. "Why would I take it to heart?" Clara was caught off guard, pausing before saying, "I mean, River and I really are just friends. Please don't misunderstand." "I haven't misunderstood." I smiled. "Your friends, old acquaintances, each other's youthful memories. I know all that. I turned to leave. Wait. Clara suddenly called out. I stopped but didn't turn around. He has a hidden album on his phone. The password is my birthday. It contains all our memories. Clara's voice carried a hint of triumph. Winona, you've been with him for 4 years. Has he ever created a dedicated album just for you? My body stiffened, but I didn't turn around. So what? So, Clara walked in front of me, looking at me. So he's never forgotten me. Winona, these 4 years, you've just been keeping him company in my place. Winona's POV. I laughed. Miss Clara, we're all adults. There's no need to play these games. If you want him, go fight for him. You don't need to come show off to me about how special you are to him. Leaving Clara with an ugly expression, I walked away. When I returned to the private room, River was looking for me. Where did you go? You were gone so long. I ran into Miss Clara, and we chatted for a bit. I sat down and took a sip from my glass. River frowned. What did you talk about? Nothing much. I smiled. She just told me you have a hidden album on your phone, and the password is her birthday. A flash of unease crossed River's eyes. Winona, let me explain. No need to explain. I interrupted him. That's your privacy. I respect that. River stared at me. Winona, something's really off with you. River grabbed his coat. Come on, let's go home and have a proper talk. But the birthday party isn't over yet. Let's go. He pulled me up without allowing any argument, said goodbye to everyone, and left the private room. As soon as we got in the car, someone knocked on the window. River lowered the window. Clara stood outside, her long hair gently lifting in the night breeze. She bit her lip. Everyone's left. I can't get a ride. Could you give me a lift? Before River could speak, I'd already pushed open the car door. Of course. Miss Clara, sit in the front. The view's better. Clara froze, the words she'd prepared stuck in her throat. She looked at me, confusion flashing in her eyes, but still got into the passenger seat. The car drove through the night. Clara kept talking, reminiscing about college days, reminiscing about all the little moments with River. River occasionally responded with a word or two, mostly staying silent. She continued with melancholy. Sometimes I really regret it. If only I hadn't gone abroad back then. It's all in the past. River cut her off. The car fell into brief silence. Just then, a car suddenly shot out from a side road. River jerked the steering wheel and slammed the brakes. The car spun out of control and crashed into the roadside barrier. In the tremendous momentum, River instinctively reached out to shield Clara in the passenger seat. In the back seat, I was violently thrown forward, my forehead slamming hard into the back of the front seat. Intense pain struck, and warm liquid flowed down from my temple. Winona. River turned to see my face covered in blood, his face instantly turning deathly pale. Are you okay? I wiped the blood blurring my vision with the back of my hand. I've fini. Take Miss Clara first. You're like this and you still. I'm really fine. I can take a taxi to the hospital myself. Miss Clara was frightened. You should take her home to rest quickly. With that, I pushed open the car door, walked to the roadside, hailed a taxi, and left without looking back. After I finished getting my wound treated and left, I returned home and leaned on the sofa. River pushed through the door and rushed over, crouching in front of me. Why did you leave alone? Do you know how worried I was? I opened my eyes. Weren't you supposed to take care of Miss Clara? Her father just died. She's emotionally unstable, she needs you more. Winona. River finally couldn't hold back. He grabbed my hand. What's been going on with you lately? Is it because Clara came back and you're uncomfortable? I've told you she and I know. I pulled my hand back. Your ancient history. You're taking care of her only because her father just died and she has no family in this city. I understand all of it. Then why are you? River. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. Do you remember how I used to get upset when you spent time with Clara, and you'd always say I was too sensitive, too unreasonable? River froze. Now I'm reasonable, not sensitive, not upset. I shrugged. Isn't this what you always wanted? Winona's POV. I stood up. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to bed. As I turned, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Winona, you're not going to leave me, are you? I hadn't expected him to notice so keenly. Since he'd guessed, I might as well be honest, we could part on good terms. But then River locked his gaze on me intensely. We've been together for 4 years. By now we're both used to each other's presence. You won't leave me, right? So he was anxious about me leaving only because he'd grown accustomed to my presence. I suddenly remembered that in all these years together, though River had been a competent boyfriend, he'd never once said the word love to me. Thinking about it now, he never said love to me, perhaps because the person he truly loved in his heart was someone else. As for me, I was just a habit. I smiled slightly. You're right. I had indeed grown accustomed to his presence too. It was just a habit I could break. Perhaps it was my recent abnormal behavior that made River especially uneasy. He actually took several days off and stayed home specifically to keep me company. He personally cooked the dishes I liked, took me out to movies and shopping. Everything seemed just like before. Yet something had changed. A couple days later, Clara called. When the specially assigned ringtone sounded in the living room, I was watering plants on the balcony. I heard River answer the phone, his tone unconsciously gentle. "Clara?" My hand paused. Water flowed in a thin stream from the watering can's spout. River hung up and came over. "Clara said a friend of hers is holding an art exhibition here, opening tomorrow. She got 2 extra tickets and wants to invite us both." Before he spoke, I heard that he'd already agreed. "Sounds good." I set down the watering can. I haven't been to an exhibition in a long time anyway. The next day, when River and I arrived at the exhibition venue, Clara, carefully made up, was already waiting at the entrance to the gallery. "River, you're here." She hurried forward, very naturally reaching out to link her arm with River's. River's body stiffened slightly, his peripheral vision glancing at me. I'd already started walking inside. Behind me, Clara's soft voice continued. "This exhibition is hosted by a friend of mine who just returned from France. Many of the works are really interesting." The gallery had soft lighting and sparse crowds. "River, look at this one." Clara pointed at an oil painting depicting a seaside sunset. "Doesn't it look like that bay we went to for landscape painting in college?" River followed her pointing finger, memory stirring, his expression somewhat dazed. It does look similar." Clara wore a nostalgic expression. "Thinking back to that time, it was really wonderful. We did so many things together, went to so many interesting places." I had no interest in listening to them reminisce. I was quickly drawn to several works combining ecological photography with oil painting and slowed my pace. "Watch out." The instant the cry rang out, a sharp snapping sound came from overhead, steel cables breaking. I looked up and saw a massive suspended installation losing balance, toppling toward where they stood. Everything happened too fast. River didn't hesitate for even a second. He lunged toward Clara, wrapping her tightly in his arms as they both rolled toward a safe area. I only had time to raise my arms to protect my head and face. Shattered crystal fragments rained down. Sharp pieces sliced across my left shoulder, bringing piercing pain. I staggered backward. My foot caught on something and I fell. The back of my head slammed hard against the edge of a metal display stand. Intense pain came with instant darkness, warm liquid flowing from both my shoulder and the back of my head. I lay on the cold floor, ears ringing, vision beginning to blur. I used all my strength to turn my head slightly. Through the blood haze, I saw River helping Clara to her feet. Blood seeped through his back, yet his first instinct was to check on Clara. His voice carried a panic I'd never heard before. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Where are you injured?" Clara leaned against him, pale, shaking her head gently. So he really did love Clara. Loved her so much that in a crisis he'd instinctively save her first. Loved her so much that he'd ignore his own wounds. Loved her so much that he'd forget about me, his girlfriend of 4 years, and how badly I was hurt. I tugged slightly at the corner of my lips, then lost consciousness as darkness swallowed everything. Winona's POV. When I finally opened my eyes, the harsh, sterile fluorescent light of the emergency room stung my retinas. My head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, and my left shoulder felt as though it had been set on fire. I tried to shift my weight, but a sharp hiss escaped my lips. "Don't move," a stern voice said. I turned my head slightly and saw Dr. Evans, a senior surgeon who worked in the same department as River. He was carefully adjusting M4 drip beside my bed. "You have a mild concussion and required 13 stitches on your shoulder. The glass missed your axillary artery by less than an inch. Winona, you're lucky to be alive." I looked at the thick white bandages wrapping my shoulder. "Thank you, Dr. Evans." He sighed, his expression a mixture of professional detachment and personal sympathy. "Where is River?" "The paramedics brought you in, but they said you were at the gallery with him." I tried calling his pager, but there was no answer. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little perforations in the acoustic foam. "He's with Miss Clara. She was in the accident, too." Dr. Evans frowned, the lines around his mouth deepening. He knew, as did most of the hospital staff, about River's recent preoccupation with his former professor's daughter. "I'll have the nurses page him again. He needs to be here." "Please don't," I said softly, but with enough finality to make him pause. "I'd rather rest quietly." Dr. Evans gave me a long look before nodding slowly. "I'll check on you in an hour." The room descended into a heavy, suffocating silence once he left. The anesthesia from the stitching was beginning to wear off, replaced by a raw, biting pain that radiated down to my fingertips. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the profound emptiness hollowed out inside my chest. It was funny, really. For years of loving a man, of molding myself into the perfect partner, of swallowing my insecurities to be his peace, all of it shattered as easily as the glass installation at the gallery. The door burst open. River stood in the doorway, chest heaving, his white shirt stained with Clara's blood, and a few drops of my own. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were wide, darting frantically until they landed on me in the hospital bed. Winona. His voice cracked. He rushed to my bedside, his hands hovering over my bandaged shoulder, too terrified to touch it. God, Winona. I just found out from the triage nurse. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you were hurt this badly. I turned my head to look at him. His eyes were red-rimmed, brimming with genuine panic. Is Clara okay? I asked. My voice was entirely flat, devoid of sarcasm or anger. River flinched as if I had slapped him. She just has some minor scrapes. They're observing her for shock. Winona, I'm so sorry. The installation fell so fast, and she was right under it. I just reacted. I thought you were behind me, out of the drop zone. I thought. You don't have to explain, I interrupted gently. It was instinct. You did the right thing. He stared at me, his breath hitching. In the past, this was the moment I would have cried. I would have pounded my fists against his chest and asked him why I was always his second choice. I would have demanded to know why he didn't even look back to check on me before carrying her away. But today, I just felt tired. You're not angry? He whispered, his voice trembling. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the wind to push him over. I'm not angry, I said. And it was the absolute truth. Anger requires passion. Anger requires hope that things can change. I had neither left for him. You should go back to her. Shock can be dangerous. I'm fine here. I am not leaving you, River said fiercely, pulling up a chair and sitting heavily beside the bed. He grabbed my uninjured hand, gripping it tightly. I am staying right here. I'm so sorry, Winona. I promise, I'll make this up to you. I'll make it right. I let my hand rest lifelessly in his. I didn't pull away, nor did I squeeze back. I just closed my eyes and let the darkness take me again. I only had 6 days left anyway. Winona's POV. The days following my discharge from the hospital were the strangest of our entire relationship. River transformed. He took a leave of absence from the hospital, something the youngest director in hospital history had never done. He stayed home with me, cooking meals, brewing herbal soups for my recovery, and helping me change the dressings on my shoulder. When Clara called, he stepped out to the balcony and kept the conversations under 30 seconds. I can't come over. Ask the on-call nurse to help you. I'm taking care of Winona. He was desperately trying to patch the massive, gaping hole in the hull of our sinking ship. On the evening of the 4th day, he ordered dinner from the French restaurant we went to on our first anniversary. He set the table with candles, poured my favorite sparkling water, since I couldn't drink alcohol with my medication, and wore a crisp dress shirt. I sat across from him, eating my food mechanically. The stitches in my shoulder pulled uncomfortably with every movement, a constant physical reminder of my place in his subconscious. Winona, River said softly, setting his fork down. I looked up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. He didn't kneel, perhaps, sensing that the gesture would feel too theatrical for the quiet devastation lingering in our home. Instead, he slid the box across the mahogany table and flipped it open. Inside rested a stunning, princess-cut diamond ring. The facets caught the candlelight, throwing brilliant prisms across the dining room. I've been an idiot, River said, his voice thick with emotion. He reached across the table and gently held my hand. These past few weeks, I lost sight of what mattered. I let guilt over my professor's death blur the lines. I made you feel like you weren't my priority. But seeing you bleeding in that gallery, realizing I could have lost you, it woke me up. I stared at the diamond. It was beautiful. For years ago, I would have wept with joy. I would have thought that my patience, my endless giving, had finally won his heart. Marry me, Winona, he pleaded, his eyes locked onto mine, searching for the warmth that used to be there. Let's start over. Just you and me. I've already told Clara that once her father's estate is settled next week, I can no longer be her primary contact. I'm setting boundaries. From now on, it's only you. I looked at his desperate, handsome face. He was terrified. He was clinging to me like a drowning man, finally realizing that the quiet, dependable woman he had taken for granted was his actual lifeline. I slowly pulled my hand from his grasp, took the ring from the velvet box, and slipped it onto my own finger. It was a perfect fit. Okay, I said. River let out a breathless exhale, a shaky smile breaking across his face. He stood up, walked around the table, and pulled me into a careful embrace, mindful of my shoulder. Thank you, he murmured into my hair. Thank you for not giving up on us. I love you, Winona. I really do. It was the first time he had ever said those words to me. I love you. I listened to the sound of them, waiting for my heart to flutter, waiting for the familiar warmth to spread through my veins. Nothing. Just cold, hollow silence. Let's go for a drive, I said quietly, pulling back from his embrace. The air in here is a bit stifling. River beamed, eager to comply with my every request. Of course. Anywhere you want. Winona's POV. The night air was cool, slipping through the cracked window of River's Audi. Drove aimlessly through the city, his hand resting on my thigh, his thumb gently stroking my jeans. He looked relaxed for the first time in a month. He thought he had fixed it. We were stopped at a red light near the financial district when his phone began to vibrate violently in the cup holder. He glanced at the caller ID. It was Clara. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face, but he didn't answer. He let it ring out. 10 seconds later, it rang again. You should answer it, I said, my voice calm. She might be in trouble. River gritted his teeth, pressing the Bluetooth button on the steering wheel. Clara, I told you I'm with River. Help me, please. Clara's voice was hysterical, punctuated by the sound of shattering glass and wailing sirens in the background. River's posture instantly went rigid. His hand snatched away from my thigh to grip the steering wheel. Clara, what's wrong? Where are you? My apartment, there's a fire. It started in the kitchen downstairs and the smoke is everywhere. I can't get out. The hallway is full of flames. River, scared, she sobbed, coughing violently into the receiver. I'm coming. Get low to the ground. Cover your mouth with a wet towel. I'm 3 blocks away. River slammed his foot on the gas, running the red light. The car surged forward, tires squealing against the asphalt. His face was a mask of pure terror. All the promises he had made at the dinner table an hour ago dissolved into the panicked ether. When we turned the corner onto Clara's street, the sky was thick with black smoke. Fire trucks were already barricading the road, their red and blue lights painting the neighborhood in a chaotic strobe. The second floor of the apartment complex was engulfed in roaring orange flames, and thick smoke billowed from the third-floor windows. Clara's floor. River slammed the car into park halfway onto the sidewalk, not even bothering to turn off the engine. Stay here, he ordered, unbuckling his seatbelt frantically. He threw the door open and sprinted toward the building. I didn't stay in the car. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out into the cool night air, the smell of burning wood and plastic heavy in my lungs. I walked slowly toward the yellow police tape, joining the crowd of onlookers and evacuated residents. I watched as River shoved past a police officer. I watched as a firefighter tried to grab him, but River violently threw the man's arm off, screaming something indiscernible as he plunged straight into the smoke-filled entrance of the burning building. He rushed in recklessly. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look back at the car to see if I was safe. He just went. I stood there on the sidewalk, bathed in the flashing lights. My shoulder ached, a dull throb that beat in time with my pulse. From now on, it's only you. His words from just an hour ago echoed in my mind, sounding absurd and comical against the roar of the fire. Instinct doesn't lie. In the car accident, his instinct was to shield her. At the gallery, his instinct was to pull her to safety. And now, facing a raging inferno, his instinct was to risk his own life to save hers. He didn't love me. He loved how much I loved him. He loved the comfort I provided. But Clara was his fire. Clara was the woman he was willing to burn for. I looked down at my left hand. The diamond ring felt incredibly heavy, a shackle forged from pity and guilt. With calm, steady fingers, I slid the ring off. I walked back to the idling Audi, opened the passenger door, and placed the sparkling diamond perfectly in the center of the leather seat. Then I turned my back to the burning building, flagged down a passing taxi on the opposite intersection, and got in. Where to, miss? The driver asked. Linden Avenue, I said. I was going home. I had packing to finish. River's POV. The smoke was absolute. It stung his eyes and clawed at his throat like swallowed glass. Clara. River screamed, coughing violently as he kicked down the door to her third-floor apartment. The heat was unbearable, blistering the exposed skin of his face and hands. River. A weak voice whimpered from the bathroom. He crawled below the smoke line, finding her curled in the bathtub, clutching a soaked towel to her face. Without a second thought, he scooped her up. She was trembling violently, clinging to his neck. I've got you, he choked out, wrapping his jacket over her head. I've got you. He carried her down the stairwell, his boots slipping on the water from the fire hoses. A wooden beam crashed down inches behind them, sending a shower of sparks over his back, burning right through his shirt. He gritted his teeth against the searing pain and pushed forward, bursting through the front doors and out into the cool, blessed air of the street. Paramedics immediately swarmed them, pulling Clara from his arms and putting in oxygen mask over her face. River collapsed onto his knees on the pavement, gasping for breath, his lungs burning. Sir, you need oxygen, your back is burned. A paramedic started reaching for him. I'm fine, River wheezed, waving the man off. He looked up, his soot-stained face scanning the crowd. Winona. He pushed himself up, panic suddenly cutting through the adrenaline. He had left her in the car. He had run straight into a burning building for another woman, mere hours after proposing to Winona. God, what have I done? He stumbled through the crowd of onlookers, his eyes darting wildly. Winona. He reached the spot where he had parked the Audi. The car was still there, the engine softly purring, the headlights illuminating the drifting smoke. But the passenger seat was empty. River grabbed the door handle and yanked it open. Winona. He froze, sitting perfectly in the center of the black leather seat, glowing under the dim overhead cabin light, was the diamond engagement ring. River stopped breathing. The roar of the fire engines, the shouting of the firefighters, the crying of the victims, all of it muted into a high-pitched ringing in his ears. He stared at the ring, his mind struggling to process what it meant. She had taken it off. She hadn't thrown it. She hadn't left it in anger. She had placed it there deliberately, calmly. No, River whispered. His hands began to shake. No, no, no. He grabbed the ring, clutching it so tightly the diamond bit into his palm, and threw himself into the driver's seat. He slammed the car into gear and sped away from the fire, ignoring the police officer yelling at him to slow down. He drove like a madman, running red lights, his heart hammering against his ribs. Like a trapped bird. She's just angry. She went home because she's angry. I can fix this. I'll grovel. I'll beg. I'll cut Clara out entirely starting tonight. He parked the car haphazardly in their building's lot and sprinted to the elevator. The numbers ticked upward agonizingly slow. When the doors finally parted, he ran down the hall and jammed his key into the lock. Winona, he shouted, throwing the door open. The apartment was entirely dark. And it was silent. River flipped the light switch, his chest heaving. The living room looked normal. At first glance, the furniture was all in its place. The plants on the balcony were watered. But as he walked further in, the emptiness began to reveal itself. The coat rack by the door was missing her beige trench coat. The shoes lined by the entryway were strictly his. He stumbled into the bedroom and threw open the closet doors. Half the hangers were empty. All of her clothes, her suitcases, her shoes gone. He ran to her study. The desk where she spent hours editing her photography was bare. Her cameras, her lenses, her hard drives gone. Winona? He called out, his voice cracking, sounding pathetic even to his own ears. He felt like a ghost haunting his own home. He walked back into the living room, his legs feeling like lead. That was when he saw it. A single white envelope rested on the glass coffee table, right next to the vase of lilies he had bought her yesterday. River picked it up with trembling, soot-stained fingers. He opened it. There was no lengthy explanation. No angry accusations. No tearful farewell. Just a single line written in her neat, elegant handwriting. I'm setting us both free. Have a good life, River. River stared at the piece of paper until the words blurred. A strangled, guttural sound tore from his throat, and his knees finally gave out. Collapsed onto the hardwood floor, clutching the note to his chest. For 4 years, she had been his shadow, his comfort, his home. He had taken her unwavering presence as a given, believing that her love for him was an infinite well he could draw from whenever he pleased. He thought he could keep the ghost of his past and the warmth of his present. But sitting alone in the hollow silence of the apartment they had built together, the brutal, crushing reality finally set in. Winona wasn't a habit. She wasn't just a comfort. She was his heart. And he had just watched it walk away. River's POV. The next 3 months were a descent into hell. River didn't return to the hospital. He extended his leave, then formally submitted his resignation as director. The prestigious title, the respect of his peers, the career he had bled for, none of it mattered. Nothing mattered when the silence of his apartment threatened to crush him every time he walked through the door. He tried calling her. Her phone was permanently disconnected. He went to her friends. They slammed doors in his face, looking at him with a mixture of pity and utter disgust. She's gone, River. She didn't want you to. Nowhere, her best friend had sneered. Go play the hero for Clara. Leave Winona alone. Clara had tried to visit him after recovering from the fire. She showed up at his door, holding a container of homemade soup, offering a soft, sympathetic smile. River, I heard about Winona, she had said gently. I'm so sorry. If you need someone to talk to. River had looked at her. He looked at the woman he had loved in his youth, the woman he had impulsively shielded with his own body time and time again. But, standing there looking at Clara, he felt absolutely nothing. No lingering, Affection, no protective urge, no spark. He realized, with sickening clarity, that he had never still been in love with Clara. He had been in love with his own unresolved ego. He had been addicted to the tragedy of their unceremonious breakup, clinging to the guilt his professor had placed on him. Clara was just an unfinished chapter he had foolishly refused to close, completely blind to the masterpiece of a novel Winona had been writing with him. Leave, Clara, River had said, his voice dead. River. Don't ever come here again. Don't call me. Don't look for me. We're done. He had closed the door in her face and blocked her number immediately. He hired private investigators. He scoured her social media, which had gone entirely dark. He barely ate, barely slept, his once handsome face hollowed out, dark circles bruising the skin beneath his eyes. He spent hours sitting on the floor of her empty study, clutching the diamond ring, imagining her walking through the door and smiling at him. It wasn't until a rainy Tuesday in the third month that he found a clue. He had been going through a box of old mail he hadn't bothered to sort, looking for anything she might have left behind. Tucked between some electric bills was a glossy brochure she must have received months ago and accidentally dropped. Global Ecological Photography Foundation. 3-year expedition. The heart of the African savannah. River stared at the brochure. A memory slammed into him. Winona cleaning her lenses in the bedroom, surrounded by rugged protective cases. Just cleaning out things I don't need, she had said with a calm smile. She had been packing right in front of his face, and he had been too distracted by Clara's phone call to notice. River booked a flight to Kenya that same night. Winona's POV. The African sun was a bleeding tangerine, sinking below the horizon of the Masai Mara and setting the tall, dry grass on fire with golden light. I adjusted the aperture on my telephoto lens, holding my breath as I focused on a lioness and her cubs resting near an acacia tree. The shutter clicked rapidly, capturing the raw, untamed beauty of the moment. Good shots, Winnie? Thomas, our expedition guide, asked from the driver's seat of the open-top Land Cruiser. I lowered the camera, wiping a layer of red dust from my cheek, and smiled brightly. Perfect shots. The lighting right now is incredible. Everything is incredible when you're not staring at a hospital wall, Thomas laughed, starting the engine. Let's head back to camp before it gets too dark. I leaned back against the rugged canvas seat as the Jeep bumped along the dirt trail. The warm wind whipped through my short hair. I had cut it all off a month ago. It was practical for the bush, but it was also a shedding of skin. These past 3 months had been the hardest and most beautiful of my life. At first, the withdrawals from my old life were brutal. I would wake up in my canvas tent, shivering in the cold desert night, instinctively reaching for a warmth that wasn't there. I would stare at the ceiling, the phantom pain in my left shoulder throbbing, wondering what River was doing, wondering if he and Clara had moved in together. But out here, nature doesn't give you time to wallow. The savannah demands your absolute presence. I photographed elephant herds crossing the river, leopards dragging kills into trees, and storms that cracked the sky open with terrifying majesty. I learned to change a tire in the mud, to build a fire, to communicate with the local Maasai villagers. Slowly, the bleeding stopped. The wound scabbed over. And eventually the scar became just another part of my skin. I stopped checking my watch to see what time it was back home. I stopped thinking about the smell of his cologne. I finally learned how to breathe on my own. As our Jeep approached the main encampment, I noticed a cloud of dust kicking up. Behind us, another vehicle was approaching fast. Thomas squinted in the rearview mirror. Looks like a private transport. We don't usually get tourists out this far. The other Jeep sped up, cutting an arc through the dirt to block our path. Thomas hit the brakes, swearing under his breath. The dust settled, swirling in the golden twilight. The passenger door of the intercepting vehicle opened, and a man stepped out. I froze. My camera slipped from my hands, thudding softly against my lap. It was River. But it wasn't the River I knew. The pristine, arrogant, composed hospital director was gone. He looked like a man who had walked through hell. He had lost weight. His clothes were rumpled and covered in red dust, and he had a dark, unkempt beard. But it was his eyes that struck me the most. They were bloodshot, hollow, and utterly desperate. He walked toward our Jeep, his steps unsteady, his gaze locked onto me as if I were a mirage that would vanish if he blinked. Winona, he breathed out, the sound barely carrying over the wind. Thomas looked at me, his hand resting on the radio. Winnie, do you know this man? Do you need me to handle him? I stared at River. For a moment, the ghost of the girl who used to love him stirred in my chest. But only for a moment. It's okay, Thomas, I said quietly. I opened the door and stepped out of the Jeep, my boots crunching on the dry earth. I walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. I crossed my arms over my chest, feeling the solid muscle I had built over the last 3 months. I stood tall. How did you find me? I asked, my voice calm, conversational. River's face crumpled. He closed the distance between us and fell to his knees, right there in the African dirt. He reached out, his trembling hands grasping the hem of my cargo pants. Winona, he sobbed, his voice shattering in the quiet expanse of the savannah. Winona, please. I'm so sorry. God, I am so sorry. I looked down at him. The man I had once worshipped, the man whose slight frown would ruin my entire day, was kneeling in the dirt, weeping like a broken child. Get up, River, I said softly. You look pathetic. I am pathetic, he cried, looking up at me, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on his face. I was a fool. I was blind, arrogant, and stupid. I took you for granted every single day. I thought I had all the time in the world to make you happy, and I threw it away for a ghost. He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out the velvet box. He opened it with shaking hands, revealing the diamond ring I had left in his car. I broke everything off with Clara. I haven't spoken to her since the fire. I quit my job. I sold the apartment. I don't care about any of it anymore. I only want you. Winona, please. Come back to me. Give me one more chance to show you. Winona, you're the one I actually love. His confession, raw and bleeding, hung in the air. You're the one I actually love. I looked at his red, desperate eyes. I remembered crouching in the hospital stairwell, crying over my mother, and the clean hands that had offered me a tissue. I remembered the yellowed note in my wallet. I remembered the 4 years of dinners, of quiet nights, of trying so desperately to prove that I was worthy of his whole heart. If he had said these words 3 months ago, in the hospital room, I might have stayed. If he had shown this desperation before he ran into that burning building, I might have believed him. But standing here, with the vast, endless sky above me and the wild earth beneath my feet, I realized something profound. I didn't need his love anymore. I didn't need to be his first choice, because I had finally become my own. I reached down and gently placed my hands over his. His eyes widened with a flicker of desperate hope. Slowly, deliberately, I closed his fingers over the velvet box, pushing it back toward his chest. I looked at him, and for the first time in years I smiled, a genuine, unburdened, peaceful smile. River, I said softly, the wind carrying my words away into the vastness of the savannah. I don't care anymore. The hope in his eyes shattered, replaced by a devastating, absolute realization. He stared at me, his mouth opening, but no sound came out. He knew with terrifying certainty that he had lost me forever. The thread was cut. The fire was out. I took a step back, breaking the physical connection between us for the last time. I turned around and walked back to the Land Cruiser. I climbed into the passenger seat and picked up my camera. Let's go, Thomas, I said, looking straight ahead. Thomas nodded, putting the Jeep into gear. As we drove away, the dust kicked up, again forming a thick red cloud behind us. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to see the man kneeling in the dirt, clutching a ring I would never wear. I looked forward, toward the horizon, where the sky was turning a brilliant, bruised purple, and the stars were just beginning to wake up.